Hi, good morning, everyone, and welcome once again to another interesting workshop on generative AI. I'm Yashwardhan Singh from NASCOM. This workshop will focus on generative AI from a service provider view and a practitioner view as well, followed by a hands-on workshop on GitHub Copilot. The workshop will be conducted by Ms. Gandhali Samant, working as a Director Customer Success, Azure Data and AI at Microsoft. She has 20 years of experience in the industry and has worked for numerous MNCs in India and internationally as well. She has been encompassing various technologies such as cloud computing, IoT, blockchain, artificial intelligence, etc. She will be accompanied by Ms. Sarika Pal, VP and Head AI/ML deployments at EXL Services. She is also having 14 years of experience in creating solutions around Azure Cloud, AI/ML services, data science, machine learning, and artificial intelligence using NLP, text classification, computer vision, etc. And she has been also closely working with industry leaders. I request the audience to post their queries in the chat window as we will be having a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the workshop. Now, I would like to hand over the workshop to Ms. Gandhali.
Hey, thank you, Yash. Let me just go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so good morning, everyone, and welcome to this workshop. I'm very excited to talk to all of you. My name is Gandhali Samant, as Yash already introduced me. Today, we are going to look at generative AI as a concept, and we are also going to look at, the provider's view versus the practitioner's view, and we will do a hands-on workshop on GitHub Copilot. So this is going to be the agenda for today. We will start with a few concepts in generative AI. I will also talk about many different technology service providers in this space. We'll look at also some of the open source providers and what kind of solutions they have if you want to look at the open source solutions in GenAI. Then I will hand it over to Sarika, my colleague from EXL, to show the idea to value transformation, how they are doing it. And then I'll come back to you for GitHub Copilot, where we will set up GitHub Copilot and we will work our way through using it. So that's going to be our agenda today. So to start with, what is generative AI, right? This is something that has been on our mind since probably last 7 to 8 months. And there has been a lot of talk about ChatGPT when it was launched and how it is going to change all our lives. So I thought maybe it's a good idea to kind of, understand the basics, understand some of the concepts of generative AI before we actually dive into what kind of solutions that are available today in the market. So simply speaking, to actually just define, right, generative AI describes a category of capabilities within AI that can create content, and that content is very, very human like. So for an example, when you are talking to a bot, that bot is responding you, and it is actually mimicking a person who would actually respond to you from a call center, right? So that's a popular example of ChatGPT. Or you want to create something like a image or something which does not exist on Google. That could be another example where you can use generative AI. So let's look at what are the different things it can actually do. So some of the examples would be natural language generation, as we talked about a chatbot, where you create a chat kind of a conversational experience for your users. There could be also where you are typing something and you want you want your users to give a autofill kind of experience, like a user is asking a query, but before they ask a query, you are guessing what that query is going to be, and the AI is going to kind of generate the full query for them. That could be a couple of examples for a natural language generation. Image generation, again, as I said, is another way. And I think one thing that is very interesting for those who are developers in the audience is AI can actually generate a code for you. And we'll look at that in in a bit more detail. So, for example, I'm just gonna show you some examples here. My mom's birthday is coming up this weekend, right? And I'm not a writer, but my mom loves to consume content, and she likes poems and articles and so. And I'm a person who like deals in bits and bytes, right? So, what if I want to give a birthday poem to my mother, and AI or Chat GPT or any kind of AI which is generating content can help me here. Similarly, many times we can many times we want an image, right? We are trying to search for certain pictures or certain images input into our presentations or just to do our children's projects, right? And many times those images we go and search for Google. But what if you are imagining something which is not going to be able to found on Google, right? So, for example, you want a picture of a tiger eating a burger. You are not going to find it on Google, at least in a way that you would find a picture of a tiger trying to hunt. But AI can generate it for you, and you can also change the prompt to say, okay, I don't want a real tiger, I want a cartoon tiger, and AI can understand that and generate the content accordingly, right? And as we said, the last one, the code generation. So I come from a time where I started working in 2001 as a programmer right after finishing my engineering, and that time I was kind of upskilling on Java and so on. And the only way, the only reference point that was available to us to upskill or to learn Java was Java Docs. And that was just a reference. It is not going to tell you whether you are writing your code correctly, whether your code is optimized, whether you are writing the functionality correctly. And many times, a lot of organizations wouldn't even allow you to connect to internet. And the days of Stack Overflow haven't yet come. In those generation, I come from that generation, and when I look at today, when today's developers have this availability that they can just write in an IDE what they want to code, and the entire code could be generated, and that saves so much time for and that increases the developer productivity and velocity by such a high value, because you are not spending time searching 10 places over the internet. You are actually getting the code right in your ID, and you can do a lot of different stuff with the kind of suggestions you are getting as well. So these are some of the examples, right? So let's look at some of the concepts and how does it actually work. So it starts with what we call LLMs, large language models. Now, what are LLMs? Generative AI applications are powered by LLMs, which are, I would say, specially type of machine learning models. Now, the difference here is they are trained on a huge amount of natural language data. That way they are able to determine sentiment, they can summarize text, they can also generate new natural language, and these LLMs are kind of the base for many of the generative AI application. The next concept, I think, and again, I'm going to not go into very much detail in this. These are meant to give you pointers so that you can actually go and do some more upskilling or learning by yourself. But when you look at today's generative AI models, right, you will see one term coming up again and again, which is transformer architecture. Simply, it means is it has two components. One is an encoder block and another is a decoder block. Encoder block means you create semantic representation of everything that is given to you as data for training, versus decoder block is the one that can generate the new content. And when you see many different models, so for example, Google has this BERT model, right, which they use, it's a encoder model which they use for optimizing their search engine. When you look at Chat GPT, it is more of a decoder model, right, because Chat GPT is creating new content. So these are the two concepts that you really need to understand when you start to dig deeper into generative AI. The third one is tokenization. Now, what tokenization means is you are giving a very huge, large amount of data for machine to understand, right? A machine will understand it only in a way that it is supposed to understand, which is numbers. And this is tokenization is a way to basically decompose your training text into token. So, for example, I have a sentence, right? I heard a dog bark loudly at a cat. Every word of that sentence could be a token. And for simplicity, I'm showing here word, but it could be in reality, there could be partial words, there could be combinations of words and punctuations together that can be tokenized. Tokenize is a way to identifying unique text value for each each element of your language. And then we have embeddings. Embeddings, simplistically, it can mean that projecting your token in a 3D space, right? How you see the semantic relationship between between multiple tokens. So, for example, a dog, a token for dog, and a token for bark are generally going to be close together, and they are going to be far away for a token for skateboard, right? So these are the vector representations which are called embeddings, which tell you that, what are the relationships between your token. And then the last part is attention. In attention, when you are using encoding, attention is used to examine each token and kind of determining appropriate encoding for the vector embedding. When you are using it for decoder block, these layers are used to predict the next token. So as you are seeing the GIF here, right? If say you are typing a sentence, I heard a dog, the AI would be able to understand that you are talking about dog and you are saying something about hearing a dog and dog barks. So AI can tell you the word bark. Again, I'm talking at a very, very, I would say 10,000 feet level, but this is just to give you an idea that that is how generative AI work. And these are some of the important concepts in generative AI before you can start, digging deeper. Now we are going to switch on the gears and I'm going to talk about generative AI providers, right? So if you look at some of the, I would say, top technology service providers today in the market, uh, it would start with OpenAI because, the organization behind GPT-3 and other generative model, they have been really pioneering the advancements in the field for language generation and understanding. Google is another, I would say, they are the path breakers. They have been actively researching and developing various different generative AI models, including the one that I called out, BERT, for natural language processing tasks. Uh, Microsoft Research has also been working on generative model, and their cloud platform also offers tools and services for building AI application, including GenAI. Uh, when we look at, say, NVIDIA, right? NVIDIA it actually fills a different kind of gap in the market. NVIDIA is known for its powerful GPUs. We all know NVIDIA. And they have contributed significantly to the AI research and they offer hardware as well as software solutions for training and deploying Gen AI models. We all know Adobe, right? Adobe has yet another explored other way. So if you look at, say, GitHub Copilot, it is a very much a tool for developers, whereas Adobe is looking at creating more creative tools with the help of AI, and creating capabilities like, for example, image creation, image manipulation, as well as some of the designing elements. Salesforce, again, they are one of the very well-known CRM systems. So they are using generative AI into their CRM and marketing automation solution. Amazon Web Services, again, another cloud platform, and Facebook. We all know that Facebook AI research has been contributing and exploring generative models for many different applications. So this is the top technology service providers who are like the big players in the current AI, I would say, current AI field. But if you look at the market map, and this is not in any way finite, right? Here I found, actually, when I was researching for this workshop, I found an article on Medium where it showed so many different options and solution providers, and they have categorized them into multiple different categories, such as, if you see a company like Apple, you'll see that they are into spatial computing. They are also into human interfaces because of all the the hardware that they build for people. and they are also an infrastructure. Whereas if you see somebody like Adobe, they are more prominently displayed in the creator economy, right? So this, again, as I said, it's not a finite view, but this gives just a glimpse into the world of Gen AI and what many different players, whether big or small or medium size, are trying to do in the field of AI. Moving on to, we will also look at some of the open source ones. Now, as a developer, many times we don't have option, or we don't have, if you are doing any, any hobby projects, you don't want to use lot of paid services, or you might not have capital for that. That's where open source Gen AI tools also will come into picture. So TensorFlow is, again, this is something we have been using for, I think, probably 4 5 years. That's, I think, probably 4 years back I used TensorFlow for the first time. They are the ones who pioneered the support for various types of GANs, the generative adversarial networks, and also variational autoencoders. Then PyTorch, again, it's very, very, I would say, popular for deep learning framework. We have also GPT-2 to GPT-3 clones, and also we have another, say, for example, Keras. Keras is a open source deep learning library that, again, gives you a very high level API for building and training neural networks. So that, again, can be used with something like TensorFlow. So you can get TensorFlow, and if you want to, build a custom layer on the top of TensorFlow, you could use something like Keras. So these are some of the open source Gen AI, models and tools and solutions that are available in market. And I would really encourage you to go and take a look at all of them and see what fits your bill, what are the ones that you would want to start using. So with that, I'm actually going to hand it over to Sarika. I just have one more information to give you. When I come back, we are going to a kind of deep dive into GitHub Copilot, the AI pair programmer, where we will, for those of you who have GitHub account, it's great. If you don't have, we can quickly create a GitHub account. We can, we can enable a free GitHub Copilot trial, and we can actually see how Copilot works. So I'll see you back in some time. Sarika, over to you.
Thank you so much, Gandhali, for the wonderful session. It was really insightful for, I hope, for everyone. Let me just share my screen. I won't take much time. Second. Okay. Good morning and hi everyone. So as Gandhali talked about the introduction about generative AI, right? What exactly it is, what are different providers in the market. Some of them are open source, some of them from the cloud providers, right? So now I'm going to talk about using all those tools and services which are available in the market. How can you make it real? And how can you create your solutions using generative AI? And I'm going to start with a very lighter mode, right? So it's we can see the slide, right? So it basically is saying, right, you just tell the name generative AI and you can get all the attention from everyone, right? Be it your leaders, your CDOs, your CIOs, or even if you are as a startup, you are looking for investment, right? If you go to the investors and you just tell them, okay, our solution is just it's powered by generative AI. We are using generative AI at the back end, and you'll get the all the investment and attention, right? Uh, so, and that is, I would say, it's true also, right? If we see the, how the progression has been since Chat GPT 3.5 was released, it was launched in the market, right? It had seen more than 100 million users within 2 months of time, right? And what, as per, I would say, Goldman Sachs, they're saying that the entire world's GDP, right, it is going to get increased and it will be over $7 trillion in 10 years of time. And obviously, if, the entire world is going to use generative AI, the backbone of that is infrastructure, and cloud is going to play a very important and critical role there. The cloud spend spend is going to also increase, and that is also expected close to more than $300 billion by 2025. And as I said, right, most these days everyone is talking about it, and they are not just talking about it, right? So companies are actually, they are making effort to use generative AI based model. They have got a separate investment for those kind of projects, and creating solutions around that. uh, so if I talk about that, what can enterprises do and how exactly they can use the generative AI models, and for what all situation they can do it. So I'll just quickly talk about, as Gandhali was also telling us, right? So if I talk about generative AI, it starts with understanding your data, right? Whatever data you are feeding into these LLM models, and when you are going to fine tune it, right? Apart from the data it has been already trained on. So first, it will try to understand your data. Once it has understood your data, you can extract the information from that particular data. You can classify those some of the documents or the data what you are providing. It can very well summarize your information which is given in the document in various format. You can limit the number of the sentences. You can limit the number of lines, number of words in any kind of format you want to summarize your information. And it is also the last but not the least, you can generate the information. For example, if you have different kind of information, you have balance sheets, you have some investment reports, different kind of data you can feed into the system, and then you can generate different kind of images or reports, or the charts, tables, in whatever way you want to generate the information. And if I talk about enterprises, how exactly they are using these GenAI models, I'm going to divide into two parts. One is basically enterprise facing, which is within enterprises, how can exactly they can use it. The second part is customer facing, basically the customer of these enterprises or the end users, how exactly they can use GenAI based solutions. These are the like the product development. For example, for a pharma company, they can using generative AI model, right? They can accelerate the drug discovery phase of the using a Gen AI model. And within the enterprise, they have software engineers and data engineers, right? And they using Gen AI models. Again, they can create code. They can convert code from one language to another language. They can do code quality analysis. They can improve their codes for certain errors they are looking for. All those information they can get for using this GenAI model. Then conversational business intelligence, as I was talking about, using financial data and financial statements like cash flow statements, balance sheet statements. If you want to create analysis or any kind of insights you want to create in terms of charts, table, pie charts, that also you can very well use, and you can create it. If I go to the customer facing side, as an end customer, most of the time we talk to our call center agents, right? So agent assist and co-pilot for customer services, which is basically, as an agent, what I can do if I am talking to my customer. And you have seen that multiple times. You have, for example, if you have raised any request on Myntra, right? So you don't need to every time give the background about your historical calls, because these agents are well equipped with the knowledge bases or the historical calls and the transcripts and everything, right? So they can very well in the back end using these transcripts and the historical call records. What was the sentiment of the call, right? What was the topic of the those particular calls, right? What problem a customer earlier had mentioned, and what was the resolution, and what it has not been resolved. So all these information can be on agents' fingertips using the GenAI models, because they can very well type the question, and within a second they are able to get the answers. And the customer wiki is again within for if the as an agent I'm going to talk to any customers, different kind of information, and these are mainly on the financial domain, right? So where you have relationship managers, or you have wealth managers. There they need to get the important information about the market, and they have used to read the lot of information from different kind of reports and everything. And remembering all those information, making notes and everything becomes a tremendous task for them. So what they can do, using again that information as knowledge base, they can extract important information from that, and they can use it further. These are some of, as I was talking about, different kind of scenarios. I won't say these are the use cases. These are different kind of scenarios where you can put your mind and think, okay, if I am going to use the customer, this generative AI for my company or for probably my personal use, how exactly I can use that. If I talk about generative AI, right? So obviously building these models or operationalizing these models won't be possible without our end-to-end architecture. And this architecture has to be the well-architected, vetted by the well-architected framework. So when I say that, which is basically the architecture, what you are creating, it has to be secured, right? It has to be cost optimized, right? It has to be backed by the operational efficiencies, and there are other factors also. So I'll just talk about very high level architecture. If I'm going to use or any enterprise is going to use GenAI models, the foundational layer is infrastructure. And this is very, very important because using that only you are going to make those models operationalize and the end user can use them. So on the infrastructure side, compute is definitely very important because all these models are huge models. These are big models, and you will be requiring the higher compute not only just for the training or fine tuning of your model, even for the inferencing also. So for inferencing also, you'll have to make your inferencing of the queries into smaller chunks, and in the backend you'll have to use GPUs. So the what kind of compute you are going to use? Are you going to parallelize the queries? Any parallel computing will be required. That is very important. And then comes to the data. Data is definitely, it's a most of the time it will be unstructured data in the form of either textual data or the images or the videos, apart from the the very well structured data. Where how exactly you are going to source your data, right? What kind of data, from where you are going to get it, where exactly you are going to store it, what could be the size of the data if you are going to find your model. And the platform is basically, when you are going to use any kind of platform, what it could be is this, enabled by the automated ML, which is basically in the backend. It can also decide what kind of model will be useful basis on your data, because in the market there are plenty of models which are available. Some of them from the cloud providers, some of them they are open source models. And your machine learning platform should also be well connected or integrated with your DevOps pipelines, because again, MLOps becomes even more important in case of generative AI models, and we call it as LLM ops, which I'll be going to talk about later. And the networking is, again, you'll have to secure your data, your environment. So networking becomes very important. Once your infrastructure is set up, basically now you can move to the models which you are going to use. Again, the variety of models are available. How you are going to try it out, different kind of model basis on the requirement, what you have, the use case, what you have. If you're going to manage with the textual data, you'll be using large language models. If it is going to be images, that you probably will be using diffusion model. For voices, it is speech model. But in some cases, you'll be using the combination of all these kind of data. There you'll be needing this multimodal models, which is basically combination of all these kind of data. Once your models are all done using the infrastructure and the tools in the backend, then comes the application layer, which is basically this is the layer where the end users will be accessing this layer. And through this application layer, they will be asking questions, they will be looking for specific information or extraction of the classification. So for example, it can be Q&A based engine, right? Where end user is writing some question, they are getting the answer. It can be any contact center also, or it can also get integrated with any kind of RPA system in any organization. So now I'll move to the data management, and basically, because for these generative AI models, data again is very important as compared to any other ML models. On the data management side, I talk about typical data management solution lifecycle is it starts with the data strategy, right? And data strategy on this NAI model is the first step, and it is important because as you're going to fine tune your models, right? So the data source becomes very important. And as you have seen, right, you can also generate data also using this GenAI model. So using synthetic data and again creating GenAI models, it can create some kind of problem. So basically what I'm saying that for data strategy, it is very important that you just get the authentic data source, what different kind of data sources you are having in your model or on your organization, what is the authenticity of those sources. Are you also going to create any kind of synthetic data? Are you going to redact your data because this data is having some personal information, right? There's some PI information which can be sensitive information. Those all those things will come under data strategy. Then it moves to the data governance and architecture. Is basically security is important, data lineage is important, right? So if you are going to have different kind of version controls on the data side, and the architecture, again, where exactly you are going to store the data, how you are going to manage the different version of the data. Then it comes to the data engineering, which is basically once you have got the data, what kind of data pre-processing you are going to do. Are you going to do any data cleansing, right? You are going to do the missing data treatments, all those things. And if you are getting data from different sources, right, you have to first convert your data in a particular format, which so that it can be fed into your machine learning models. And then finally comes to the data operationalization, which is basically how exactly you are going to use this data for your models. Data management, if I talk about for data operations and governance, for specifically for GenAI models, because I just wanted to emphasize here more, because there are some changes or different kind of things we'll have to manage when we talk about the GenAI models. So on the operation side, cost becomes very important factor, because as everyone knows, these LLM models are expensive, and expensive not just on the usage term but also to operationalize these models. Even the inferencing also becomes very costly here. So we need to have the cost estimation techniques, and we need to have some controls and tools on the cost, right? How much cost we are, and as an organization, how much cost we are going to spend on this. And again, in the back end, the infrastructure becomes important. So within our organization, we have seen instances where within our team, people are using all these GPU instances. They just keep forgetting closing it. They are not using the way ideally the way it has to be used, right? So that's why we need to have a strategy around how exactly we are going to optimize and manage the cost of that. And then to improve the automation of monitoring of these GenAI models, that is also important. Then we talk about we also need to tag the lineage of GenAI solution. Uh, so lineage is important. One thing is definitely on the data lineage side. And as I was talking about synthetic data, right? As if we are going to have the multiple iterations or creating GenAI model to create synthetic data. On top of that, again you are creating or fine-tuning your model, and again you are creating synthetic data. So it can be multiple iterations. The authenticity of the data becomes a problem, and there we can see some problem. Then on the operation side, we need to heavily invest on MLOps, because there, as you have seen, MLOps anyways is a very important thing if we are going to use any kind of ML and AI models, because is what it does is basically, first of all, it connects all the different kind of people who are working on the operationalizing ML model, not just the data scientists who are developing the model. After that, the testers who are testing the model, and then the deployment folks, ML engineers who are deploying the model, and after that, even the monitoring becomes important. So once monitoring is done, you need to, basis on the feedback the model is getting into production, the retraining of the model becomes important. The same thing will apply for large language models as well. On the governance side, I would say security definitely becomes a big, and I think everyone is talking about these security of the data, what it is feeding into the GenAI models, because the prompt engineering becomes important here, because as the important or the secure sensitive information is residing the input data what you are providing, right? Tweaking these prompts, a person basically or the end user can get some of the sensitive information or PI information using this GenAI model. So there we need to have a strategy, or probably how can we limit the prompts for the end user, so that none of these sensitive information is going out of these models. Then we have to have a strategy to manage data quality for unstructured data. When I talk about quality, data can be right. So some of the time it is kind of black box for us. So we need to have a strategy or controls around the data quality of these models. And that will obviously come with the different kind of prompts we are going to give, so that we can reduce the hallucination, and we can also manage the content what is coming out of these queries what we are putting into GenAI models. Now I'll come to the operationalizing of this GenAI model, which is basically, now we have built our GenAI models or the solution using GenAI models. Now I need to put it into production. And after putting into production, I also need to monitor it, right? Whether it is giving the results as per expectation or not. If not, are there any, drop in accuracy, or if the models are not performing well, we need to retrain the model, right? So that decision also has to be important. So the building blocks of this AI model operationalization are, first thing is data infrastructure, which I just spoke about earlier also, right? So there we need to focus a bit more, because most of the times we are going to focus on the unstructured data when we are going to use these LLM models. Because I think on the structured data side, we have done a lot of research, and all of the companies, they're comfortable and they know the techniques and strategy around the structured data. But now we have to know more, we can get away with unstructured data, and we have to treat them as a first class citizen, I would say, right? Then we'll come to the compute part, which is basically the GPU strategy becomes important. Then again, depending on the use case and the company's preference and the investment and the cost, the strategy will be basically, are we going to use a cloud-based compute, or we are going to use on-prem computes if company already has some existing computes, right? Then strategy to power multiple use cases within the optimal footprint, because obviously they will need to run the multiple use cases in parallel. And how can we create a top layer infrastructure where in the backend all these computes and the infrastructure resources can be shared. Then the software and tooling part, different kind of tools. As Gandhali was talking about, the software and tools are available in the market. Some of them are open source, some of them from the cloud providers. There also will have to make a strategy which are best suitable given the cost estimate what we have, given the budget what we have, the kind of use cases also we have, because it becomes important. You have to first analyze whether for which particular use case I want to put for this generative AI thing, and what kind of models will be required to use that. Then if I talk about LLM ops, which is nothing but I would say subsection of ML ops, where basically you'll have to focus, how exactly we have been focusing on ML ops side, how can we operationalize it, and we can automate the end-to-end pipeline, which is starting from the data ingestion, then training of the model, the deployment of the model, and the monitoring of the model. So there, in some cases, becomes a bit different. First of all, on the data side, if I talk about, there we are dealing with a huge amount of data, right? So managing those huge amount of data becomes important. Prompt engineering becomes important there. And obviously, since we are dealing with the large data, the cost also becomes important here. And there it comes to the FinOps, short form of financial operationalization of these GenAI models. So where is basically one thing is the cost optimization and the techniques what we are going to use, and how we are going to fine tune and training of our model. So what we do as a strategy, what I have seen mainly, first we try to solve the problem and create the custom kind of model using the prompt engineering as much as we can do, creating different kind of prompts, giving some information, and then creating prompts, because the fine tuning of these models again becomes a little expensive. So that is the second option for us if we are not able to get results using a prompt engineering, then only we go for the fine tuning. That what I have seen while we were creating different kind of use cases within the organization. Security and compliance is again very important part, because we are dealing with data and all the information which is there, right? So when we are giving information or providing data to these GenAI models, so as a user, it becomes our responsibility also. So what kind of information we are providing? Is the data anonymized? Because that using some different kind of prompts engineering, some sensitive information can be extracted from using that particular data. So while testing our model or training our model, data anonymization becomes important. Redacting of the samples become important. Also, apart from this, we can also create synthetic data, basically using this GenAI model, which we can further use for the fine tuning of the models. These are the different use cases what EXL it is delivering. In some of the cases we have already delivered, in some of the cases we are in discussion with, in some of the cases we are in POC stage where we are working with customer. So these are different kind of areas, and if you see, these are different kind of firms. Obviously, we will not take the name of those companies, but so we have. I'll just not talk about, I think, given the time constraint what we have. So I'll just broadly talk about where exactly we are focusing these days. So smart agent assist is definitely is one area, because that also comes under the customer data led customer experience based use cases. And here we have created this particular use case is already in production for customer, where customer is using this smart agent platform, where again when agents are working on this platform, they are able to get all the important information. They are able to get all the summary of the historical conversation with the client. Also, they are also able to access their RPA system. From there they can get particular information about the customer, which can be important while dealing with customer. And this has actually given a saving of 45 to 50% in overall reduction in average handling time. And apart from saving, the customer experience has also improved a lot, because now the customer, they don't need to make multiple calls to solve their queries. So that is on the smart agent side. Then this is again related to the claim assistant, which is part of very similar to smart agent. Then we have for bank, we have implemented the prioritized use cases, which is basically within the banks, there are different kind of marketing messages for their marketing team. What we have created different kind of marketing messages for the particular section of customers. They have created these messages, the collateral, which can be targeted to the particular segment, so that the traction of those customers become important. It has increased. And these are some of the use cases which are in banking and insurance domain. And I have taken this particular domain because so most of the use cases of business currently, which is happening on the GenAI side, is on this side. Again, there are different kind of areas. What we have seen, the code assistance is important, which I was earlier also talking about. There, the within the organization, these developers, they can bring some efficiency through this conversational code generation. They can improve their codes, they can convert their codes, and all those things, right? And then risk assessment also becomes very important, and this risk assessment is for banking domain is important. What we have seen is basically when we are going to, for example, there was a use case where for a particular customer, basis on the different kind of financial statements what they have, right? And then using those financial statements, we were able to assess the loan affordability of that particular customer, right? And then after the affordability also, that there should be any we should either revise the loan amount, the customer was earlier offered, or there should be an increase or decrease of that loan amount, any kind of modification was required or not. Then on the conversational BI side is again, I think it's very well used case for generative AI based models, because their user experience become very important. So now once as a user, if you're talking to an agent and they are able to solve their problem within first call, which is the best thing what as an end user you can have. Chatbot is again part of conversational assistant only, where you can have a huge knowledge base, and using your prompt engineering, you can create different kind of responses. You can limit your responses, prompt, so that you can also remove the chances of hallucination and the bad responses from the backend. Now, if I talk about accelerating value realization for any organization, uh, there are basically two phases which I can focus upon, right? First phase is basically for any organization to find the potential use cases, right? So where the first is, if I'm going to talk to any customer, first will be definitely the ideation stage, which will be having multiple workshops with customer to understand their pain points of their blockers, where exactly they are facing problem and they are not able to move ahead. Right. So once that is done, based on their current end-to-end, the workflow and everything, we can identify where are the gaps, and basis on that gaps, we can then fit our GenAI models, and then we can create end-to-end solution. Once we are done with the ideation stage, then next comes to the experimentation stage, where is basically we can run a small POC sort of thing, where we can use these LLM models with the customer related some data, and we can run the model and see the what value we can create for customer. And then the phase two is basically when we are done with our experimentation, we were successful with our experimentation, then how can we institutionalize that? And then how can we productionize it? Basically, what kind of infrastructure they are going to use? It is going to be as a service model, or what kind of accuracy the customer is getting. And then once we are done with that assessment, we can productionize that model. Now, this is very important because for any organization, as I said, that every organization these days have got some investment on the GenAI side. Now, for any organization, it is important to assess that whether the particular use case, what I am thinking about, does it make sense to invest in this generative AI models or not? Because these are very costly models, right? And for every problem, the solution is not generative AI, right? For example, if it's a famous saying, right? If we can use a needle to solve any problem, we don't need to use the sword, right? So similarly, for example, if I give one example, right? If there is I want to extract information from a invoice, a very well structured invoice where, the date is given, invoice number is given, we have total amount, we have tax, right? Which most of us have seen. To extract information from that invoice, does it make sense to use GenAI model or not? What all factors you'll have to think about it, right? First of all, because the cost becomes important, because you'll have to make use of GPUs computes, right? Then what are the different options which are already available? For example, for that, we already have so many OCR which are available in the market. Azure Form Recognizer is available, AWS Tech Stack is available, and then we can compare the costs, right? Whether does it make sense to particularly use in that particular use case or not. So for that, what we have done within EXL, we have kind of created a checklist sort of thing. First of all, there are some examples, right? What on the left hand side you can see there can what different kind of question we can ask within ourselves, right? So how much human effort is required to check the correction of the results or not? First of all, then the second is is that okay, if currently if it has been done manually, then if I'm going to convert into the automation using any of these ML or AI techniques, what is our CBA, which is cost benefit analysis? Does it make sense or not? What is the volume of the document, volume of the data, what you have to convert or you are trying to automate? If it is just in some hundreds, or even in 1,000 in a year, does it make sense to actually automate it? Because if I can hire a few people and they can also do it, right? Second is that, is my data secured? Because I am going to use these LLM models, and these models will reveal, and this may reveal some specific or sensitive information. Then, if I'm going to use this GenAI model, is it going to lead to any kind of bias situation, right? And the fourth is, are we compliant to market risk like copyright infringement, fraud, phishing, and all those things? So these are some of the examples, and this is again there's a long list of checklist what we have. Then comes to the, okay, now I have shortlisted some of the use cases. Now, if I want to give in the budget and the investment what I have got for my team, how can we prioritize the use cases? So as you can see, we have created this matrix here. On the x-axis, we have ROI, which is return on investment. On the y-axis, we have cost of error, which is basically what if it fails, what I'm going to lose, right? So one is cost can be in the monetary sense, and the cost can be in non-monetary sense also, right? So according to that, we have created 4 quadrants, and if it is ROI is low and the cost of error is high, definitely we need to drop that particular use case. We don't need to focus on that. And if it is cost of error is low and high, again, it's a very clear case where we can say, okay, let's 100% go ahead with that. These 2 quadrants where we say, okay, ROI is high, but the cost of error is low, sorry, high, which is basically, okay, if it will fail, the cost will be high. Then we need to do assessment. Again, for assessment, you can have certain factors basis on the organizational and the kind of team what you're having, the situation what you're having. And similarly for where the cost of error is low, but the yeah, and the ROI is also low, which is basically, okay, you won't lose anything if you are going to invest in that particular use case, but you won't gain much also. There again, you need to assess depending on the situation what you have. And these kind of different kind of samples what we have, different kind of opportunities, how we can create it. And we can have AI based compliance checks as well. And then this is the technical architecture what we have for the implementation. And then it can be definitely customized for the customer data and the customer need. And this is the last slide, which is basically talking about the different kind of risks and challenges what we can see as an organization when we are going to build these use cases, either for us or either for our customers. First is this is misinformation and about the trust what we can have, right? And where this hallucination word we have heard multiple times, and that is actually a real problem, right? So where we are probably getting some information which we were not expecting, right? And probably, and when our GenAI model is not able to get the information what we are looking for, and then it randomly provides you some information, and it becomes a problem when the solution is in production, right? Second is data privacy and confidentiality, which is again sensitive, and some proprietary data can be part of the data what we are feeding into our GenAI model, and it can becomes a problem when end users are interacting with the bots. Copyright infringement is again a problem. It can be some issue because all these models are trained on the which data is available on web, right? And there can be some issues related to copyright thing, because some of the personal or some sensitive data may have been used while training these models. And the bias is again, as it can be with any kind of AI models, and here the data is black box for us. We don't know what kind of different biases which are residing within the data on which this AI models has been trained. Can we manage it? So there are certain things what we can do from our end. First thing is that the robust data collection. So when we are going to fine tune our models, get as much data as you can get from different data sources. And to remove biases, again, we can have certain kind of checks, or there are different templates which are available to check biases in your data. and we can remove those biases again to give more data and probably create some kind of synthetic data again, and then to reduce the biases and we can diverse our data. Second is ethical AI development, which is basically we can again have some clear ethical guidelines, which is it can be in terms of biases, audits, and fairness also. So we can again there are certain frameworks which are available, and using those frameworks we can check if there are any biases and if the models are fair or not. Transparency is it's very important. Because when we are going to create any solution for our customer, we need to give the transparent picture of our the data what we are using and the models we are using. If there are any disclaimers, we need to definitely tell it to our customers so that they are also well aware about the situation. And the last thing is basically human oversight. We also call it as human in the loop, which becomes very important because there is only one way to get feedback or provide feedback to our AI model. So if we talk about any hallucination, any kind of data privacy, anything, right, we need to have at each whenever we are creating a life cycle of this GenAI model, at each step we need to have some human intervention so that there are some human agents which who can manually get some sample data and manually check these kind of leakages which are there in terms of security, hallucination, or misinformation. So that's about it about the operationalizing all these generative AI models for any organization. Thank you so much, and then I'll hand it over back to Gandhali. Gandhali, over to you.
Hey, thank you, Sarika. Thank you for that insightful and a very, very detailed session on how we can actually get the value and operationalize the AI models. So next, we are going to actually deep dive into, one of the I would say Gen AI use case, which is very close to heart for all the developers here. So let's deep dive into code generation. Just give me 1 second. So we are going to look at GitHub Copilot. So what is GitHub Copilot? I think I'm sure everybody here must have heard about GitHub Copilot, right? But it's not just something that can give you the code. It does, yes, its primary job is taking any of your instructions in a form of comments and create a code based on those comments. It can actually autofill for repetitive code, but it also has other things like right now there are a lot of other extensions which are developed on GitHub Copilot base, which for example, it can suggest you the test cases. It can help you debug your code. It can actually write documentation for your code, like at the top of every function, how you can write what are the inputs, what are the outputs, what's exactly happening in the function. It can help you, make your code more robust. It can help you deep down, put every step, each like document every step of your code. And I think one of the most important ones it can do is convert your code to a different language. So those who have been in this field of software development for some time, we all know that many times we go through the complete re-architecture of our applications, and a lot of our old applications, they have the business logic in, say for example, C++ or C sharp or any other Java, so for example. And if you want to now move to Node.js, or if you want to move to say Python, uh, it is so much easier to take those code blocks and just convert that code into a different language. So we will see all that. Before that, I just want to kind of quickly go through how it is actually done. So at the start of this session, I talked about generative AI, right? GPT, which actually is trained on a huge amount of natural language data. Now, how Copilot was built is on the top of this natural language training, there was another layer of training that was added with the use of all the publicly available code. So what the model could do is it can take your input in natural language, say in English, understands that what you are trying to do, and gives the output in form of a code, any in any form of the language that the model has been trained on. So this is how the the whole I would say AI behind it was made to work. And when you look at Copilot as a tool or as an extension to your IDE, how does it work is, first of all, you need to have access to it. So those of you who are students, you can get it for free. For others, if your organizations are already using GitHub Enterprise, you can activate your licenses working with your organizations. Or if you want to use it for personal use, there is a way to make it use for personal use. I think there is some nominal charges for that as well. For open source repository maintainers, it's again available for free. But what it does, it gives you an extension. Right now it is available in 4 IDEs: VS Code, Visual Studio, the IntelliJ, and there is one more IDE. I'm not remembering the name at the top of my head, but you can search for it. These 4 IDEs give you a way to install the extension within your IDE. So now you do not go out of your coding environment to search for code. It just happens within your IDE. How it does it, that extension looks at your code and it also takes your suggestion and it contacts the GitHub Copilot service. Now, GitHub Copilot service then goes to the OpenAI Codex model, which has been developed on the top of GPT-3, and that model provides suggestions. Now, again, it's suggestions. So you can always pick and choose, and you can decide not to use it at all. So that's why it is called Copilot and not a pilot, right? It's a developer helper. So it can give you different suggestions. And then, if you want to say use those suggestions, you can obviously just accept those. It also can take some feedback from users. Say, for example, it has given you 2 different implementation for the same function, but you chose to decide, select one because you think it's more secure or it's faster or whatever is your reason. But that feedback also goes back to the service so that it can make better. Now, one thing that we really need to understand here is, in no form, GitHub Copilot can take your code and save it or use it for a next level of training. Many times I get asked these questions, mainly in the customers who I work with, and they are in the regulatory industries, that, we cannot give our code out. No, GitHub Copilot does not take your code. For some instances, say, for example, you are selecting a code and you are asking, I want to generate this for it. That context is set to the service just to get the answer. But that context is again not saved anywhere so that it can be used for a training. Okay. So at no point of time, the code that you are writing can be used in GitHub Copilot service as a training material. It gets trained only on the open source code available, or the publicly available code. If I have to be very, very correct, publicly available code, that is the only code that is being used for the training of this service. So with that, I'm actually going to just switch on my screens. Give me 1 second, and I will start sharing my desktop so that I can show you how to enable GitHub Copilots. Just give me 1 second here. So, okay, I'm going to share back my screen. Okay. Okay, so here, this is the interface that most of you, I'm hoping, are familiar with, but this is the github.com account. What you need to do is, first of all, you can actually go and create an account if you don't have it. So let me just open a new in private window and go www.github.com. You can just go sign in. You can put in your username or email address. You can create a password. and sign in. Or if you're new to GitHub, it's again takes 2 minutes. You can just enter your email, continue. It will probably create some kind of authentication with your email, and it will give you an email account. Okay. Next thing that you need to do is, once you have the GitHub account and if you are signed in into your GitHub account, you can go here. Now, when you have an account, say a publicly created account or a personal account that you're using versus you're using an account for organization, you can see a little bit of different screen, but you can go and click on this as try Copilot, and it can tell you that you can actually use Copilot from all these organizations. If you are already part of these organization, you can ask uh, admin for access. But since I am already logged in using my my GitHub connected account, and I already have a Copilot access on it, you will see an option to create it for free. So let me just show that to you. Copilot for free access. Yeah. So you can just search for GitHub Copilot free access, and you can go here and it can tell you the entire way of how do you sign up for GitHub and how you create a free account. You might have to add a credit card here, but that's it. The credit card won't be charged until the first month is over. If the first month is over and if you still don't stop your your subscription, it might charge. So when you go to that, it will ask you to confirm your payment details, and this is the page you will see. Once you are done with that, you can then go and open the Visual Studio Code, and then I'm going to show it right here. On Visual Studio Code, you will see this. This is where you sign in with an account. Since I'm already signed with my account, it is showing that I'm signed in. But if you are not signed in with any account, it will ask you to first sign into an account. If you're already logged in github.com using an account where GitHub Copilot access has been enabled, then you will see that account name here. You can just click that. It will ask you to some authentication. It will ask you to allow it to open a few URLs. But after that, your Copilot access will be transferred here in your Visual Studio Code once you log in into GitHub using the same account where your Copilot is enabled. Once you do that, the next step here is you go to the view and you select extensions. The very first extension that you all need to install is, since I have already installed, it is showing me an uninstall option. But once your Copilot access is enabled, go here. You can select install here, and after that, it will automatically get enabled. You can disable it if you don't want to use it for a certain period of time, or you can disable it for a particular language. There are multiple options available. One more interesting, I would say, extension I wanted to show is the GitHub Copilot Labs. This is, again, this is not a G8 version. This is, think about it, is, it's a place for GitHub to experiment with new ideas before we take them into production. Now, these experiments may never become the part of the official product, or they may change, but there is a way for you to just try and play with it and see what all is coming next in GitHub Copilot. Okay, so this is again a very useful extension, especially you want to test all the features that I was talking about, like converting your code to a different language or creating more test cases. All that is available here. Okay, so with that, let's go to some of the actual trials. So I'm going to open, so this is something I had just created to test whether my internet connection is working. Many times, if your internet connection is not working, or if it is slow, Copilot can take a lot of time to give answer because it's a service, right? So your code, your questions are going to a service, and the service is getting an answer. So since it is a Python file that I have created, I'm going to just start here. And I'll say, right, hello world. And as you see, when I'm trying to type this, it is just telling me that probably you want a hello world program. So obviously I can't show it, but I'm actually just going to hit the tab key. When you do tab, it accepts what being suggested, and then I'm entering. And then it will say print hello world, right? Now, for example, if I want to write a function that asks for the username and greet the user, right? So it is creating. Now, if I just say, let me just first do this, okay? Write a program that asks the user. Let's see what is difference then. It will ask me, it will either give me, if I say write a program or if I say write a function, it is still going to give me a function, right? So these are the ways that you can experiment different things here. Now, if I say write a function, since I already tried this, it is remembering the inputs that I gave, and it is asking me whether you want to write a function to convert to Celsius to Fahrenheit. I'm saying yes, and it is creating the function to do this. All I'm doing is tab and enter, tab and enter, and tab and enter. And since I converted from Celsius to Fahrenheit, it is now going to ask me whether I want to convert it back. And yes, it will give me the entire definition, right? So for example, now, I'm just going to finish this because I don't want to leave the code open. What if we go for a Node.js, right? So now, obviously, my comment is going to be different, right? I'm not going to use hash anymore. I want to write a function that tweets a message every 5 minutes. It's a very descriptive comment that I'm giving, and let's see what it's doing. So it is giving me a, okay, right. Or it's giving me just okay. I don't want this. I just want the code, right? So let's go back here. Function tweet, yes. And why not? I don't know why not, but it is just starting everything. I'm using an experimental version extension, so it is a little wacky. It's not the G8 version that I'm using. I try to experiment. You can see that it created the entire Twitter function. Now it is also going to add the code for tweeting every 5 minutes, right? So now it is also asking me that write a function that gets the latest tweet from a user by taking username. Let me see what it is trying to as a function input. Very good. So see, it is trying to predict what I'm trying to do. So for example, first I'm writing to, I'm asking for a function that tweets a message every 5 minutes. But now the AI is asking me now next, do you want to write a function that will get a latest tweet from any user? Because if I'm doing something with Twitter, that might be the most probable function that people are using next, right? So that's where it is getting this intelligence from. So this is where we were just trying to create some new small code snippets, right? What if I go to a project which I have already created and I want to try something here? So for example, this is a project, this is a demo that I had created for, I don't know, I think GitHub Actions or something. But I wanted to show here is basically, it's a string library. It just checks whether the string is starting with upper or something like that. But what we can do is we can use this code to see some of the things that GitHub Copilot Labs can do. So when you install the GitHub Copilot Labs extension, you see this icon here. This is a GitHub, the helper that comes. And when you click that, it will show you all that you want to know, all that you could do. So for example, now I'm going to select this function, right? The moment I select this function, it is giving me the options that, you can ask it to explain the code. So maybe I'll ask Copilot to explain the code, and let's see what it does. And as I said, this is experimental. This is not yet finally official product, but you can try it. So here is the explanation. We create a new static class, we create a new static method, and it is explaining what the code is doing. So for example, think about it. You are working on a code which has been created by somebody else. It's very complex and you are not really understanding what it is trying to do. You can select it and GitHub can help you explain that code. Now, again, the earlier, the scenario that I said, that you have a function which is returned here, and I want to say change it to, or maybe first let's create a test. So maybe I'll go here and try to do a test generation. Currently only supported in JavaScript and TypeScript. Okay, that's perfectly fine. Let's still try it. Okay, it's not letting me do it. That's fine. We can try the language translation. So we can try to translate this code into Pilot, and we can ask Copilot to do it. And here is my code. Let me just make it big. And this same code that I have written in Node.js is now translated into Python. Imagine the usability and the usefulness of all this that can you for all those who are developers here, right? Again, there are many other things. So for example, here is say list steps. So when I do this, every line of my code will get a explanation right on it. As developers, we are very, very lazy to write documentation within our code. All of us have been guilty of that, right? Imagine having a helper who can do it all for us within, say, a second or two, and we don't have to again write any documentation. So for me, I think I just love this, but you guys need to go and check it for yourself. Also, for any particular language which you are using, if you see that the support or the results are not as per what you want, if you don't accept what it is suggesting, it is also going to give that feedback back to the service saying, these suggestions were not taken. And that's where we actually try and improve what we are trying to, build it here in GitHub Copilot. So with that, I think my demo and workshop is done. I probably have 8 more minutes till the close of the session. So I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to ask Sarika also to come back on the screen, and we can take any sessions or any questions that are needed. Yash, are there any questions?
Yes, Gandhali and Sarika, they are mentioned in the chat window.
Okay.
So I think the first one says how I can use generative AI to build dummy data.
Oh, it's very easy. I could have showed that in the demo itself. You can just ask. So, for example, you want to build an array. I'm just taking a very simple example. You want to build an array with first name, last name, age, whatever. You just say that create an array with all these data points that I need for say 10 records, and it will just create that data for you, and it will put that data inside the array or whatever data structure you want. So all you want to do is you need to describe it. Sometimes you need to fine tune it, like it might do a little differently, and that's where more practicing and playing with Copilot can be helpful.
Sure. So I think the another one is, what are the potential safeguards that can be put in place to prevent Terminator-like scenario?
What are the potential? Sorry, I didn't get that.
What are the potential safeguards that can be put in place to prevent Terminator-like scenario? I think this is somewhat an different kind of question. So I think we can move on to another question. So could you please provide some examples of how generative AI models that can be integrated into existing business processes and systems? AI, what deployment options are being considered? Example, cloud, on-premise, or edge devices.
Okay, so I will take that question, but I would like Sarika also to add from her view. So there are many use cases, okay, and they depend on different industries. So as I'm from Microsoft, I work with many different industry verticals, and in different industry verticals we are seeing different use cases. So for example, some of the common ones, right, are helping with the conversational part of it. Now you will say that bots have been there for a long time. The conversational AI has been there for a long time, but those bots are now using generative AI models in the back, and these generative AI models are in turn using different cognitive services, say for example search, right? So there is a lot of mixture that is kind of being built right now in some of the scenarios. Some other scenarios that we are seeing is where generative AI is being used for in legal fields. So for example, legal teams, they have huge documents and they need to create summaries of those documents, and this is again one of the cases that we are seeing. Very many customers are asking for this, that how we can use it in a more efficient way, how we can create summaries of our huge documents so that those could be given to, say, our senior leaders, or an executive view briefing. So that was another one that I very recently saw. One more that I would say is many times you have a large amount of data where you don't really know what to do with it, right? So generative AI cases are you being used to build also use cases that what you can do with this kind of data. So some of the things I would say they are replacing some of the traditional use cases that we have, versus some of the use cases are very new. But what I'm saying most probably is uh, on a customer side, it's more of what user interactions could be managed, like bots or helping assistants or even co-pilots, right? So for example, the GitHub Copilot, there are customers who are trying to take the model, which is Codex, and train it above the base model with their own coding standards, so that when their developers use those models, the code is according to their own standards and not the generic code that GitHub Copilot gives you. So this is another very developer focused use case that we are seeing mainly in, say, IT industry customers. Sarika, I would like to see your view also.
Sure. Sure. As I think Gandhali has already given a couple of examples, a few more I will talk about on the, I would say, insurance side, or I would say on the legal side also, right? So these contracts are everywhere. So if you are any kind of industry, right, sometimes you have legal contracts, sometimes you have from different vendors, right? One thing is definitely extracting information from that, right? So that, and when it is structured, templatized, it is easy to extract information. But in some cases, where the information is quite complex, which is given in the form of, sometimes it is in complex tables, or sometimes you also need to compare the contracts. Different clauses are there. If I want to, vendor one has given some quotation, right, with this certain clauses, what is included, what is not included, different kind of exclusion, inclusion, which are there. I want to compare it, right? So earlier, what I used to do, first I need to extract the information, store it somewhere, right? And then from the second contract, I need to extract information, store it somewhere. I used to write the logic to compare it. But now it has with GenAI models, you just need to give prompts, right? Just tell us, okay, can you compare the information or the clauses from contract one and contract three, contract one and eight, or whatever information, right? So there now it has become more easy. And since we already had a solution where we were extracting information from these contracts, so now we have seen the difference. Earlier, we used to write probably some kind of the logic, or sometimes some hard coded the values so that we can extract those information. Now with GenAI model, it has become very easy. So that's one thing. Other thing is that once you have get the summary of the document. For example, if I talk about medical industries, right? So as you must have seen, right, as a patient, when you go for some kind of medical reimbursement to the insurer, right, what they talk about, they ask you, okay, give me the discharge summary, give me the all the bills and all those information. As an insurer who is auditing that, right, earlier they used to manually go through all these documents and vet the information, whether the information is given by the patient is correct or not. Now they just need to just give all these documents as input. They can simply ask the question, right? What was the total amount? What was the the prescription given by this doctor? Was there any injuries or not? Anything which was critical or not? Those specific questions you can ask and you can get the answer. In the backend, you don't need to create certain kind of model, which is able to give the information. So there we have seen certain use cases. There are plenty of them. If I'll talk about that, I think probably we need another 2-3 hours. But I just wanted to give some gist about the use cases.
Sure, Sarika. I think we can take one last question, which is more focusing on the maturity and readiness of GenAI models for enterprise purposes. So I think the gist is that obviously what is the maturity, and because of the open source tools also which are available, they are also not that mature. So any comments on that? Maybe Sarika or Gandhali, you can add to it.
Yeah, Gandhali, you are on mute. I think you can go first and then I can add my comments.
Sorry, I was on mute. Okay, so I would say, see, Gen AI overall as a phenomena, it's pretty new, right? But the models that have been built, the data that they have been built on, it's a huge amount of data. So there is a maturity in the model. Now, many times what happens is, and this is my personal experience, that the use cases that are you trying to do, are they really a Gen AI kind of use case? That also matters a lot. There are some use cases where you do not need generative AI, where you need more of a traditional machine learning or even deep learning, which is going to be useful for that. So I think that maturity from the use perspective needs to be built, because there is another workshop, I think, where we will see all these differences and where what is I would say more appropriate. But that maturity, I see that we are still building as a as a market or as an overall industry. The models itself are actually, they are trained on a huge amount of data, but that does not mean that there is not a lot of hallucination. So many times these base models give you a base level intelligence, but on the top of that, what you build and how you customize it also can help you get better, more mature results. So, for example, the generative AI, right, which understands the language. Now, if you want to build a system which says goes through all your internal document and answer questions to employees about their different benefits that they have, or different, say insurance related stuff that they have, anything, any of the employee based HR kind of knowledge that is available, right? Your LLMs would be able to understand the language that a question is being asked and how to answer. But they need to have the custom data of your own policies and your own processes to be able to answer more correctly, right? So I think that is still something that is happening. People are still working on it. And I think in next 1 or 2 years, we will see some really amazing use cases and that maturity coming into us all who are using this Gen. Sarika, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Gandhali. So as Gandhali said, right, so you basically analyzing the use case, whether actually you want to use generative AI models. I know from customer side that you get this push thrown, I want to use generative AI, right, in this particular uses. For example, one of the use case where, customer had pretty much structured data, tabular data, and they said, okay, using Gen AI model, can I just get, what is the, probably the amount or the customer name? I said, for that, you already have SQL query. You don't need to use this model because that is not needed. Again, I said, if you can, needle can be used, you don't need to use the sword, right? So similarly, I think you need to educate your customers. So I understand from their side also, right? They want to use it. Sometimes they are not aware how exactly we can use it. So that's where you have to work with them, understand their problem, understand their situation, and do some kind of, probably I would say, small POC, get their data and then show them. Okay, this, not for this particular use case, this makes sense. For this one, that doesn't make sense. For that, we have another solution. You can solve this problem by this way. For everywhere, we don't need to apply generative AI models. So that maturity definitely is not there still yet, because now everyone is excited about it. Everyone is exploring together. We are also, it's not like we are an expert in Gen AI thing, right? We are also with customers exploring. We are also learning daily, right? So where they say it is feasible or not. So that's why I think together we'll have to work on this thing. And with time, the maturity will come into the market. Thank you.
Sure, Sarika. Thank you, Gandhali, as well. Thank you for your valuable insights, and thank you everyone for participating in this workshop. We'll now take a lunch break and we'll resume at 3:15 p.m. IST. with the context setting of an informative workshop on cybersecurity. Looking forward to have you with us during the day. Thank you once again. And thank you, Gandhali and Sarika, for joining us in this workshop.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for your time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.